and gentlemen, welcome back to the James Freel Show. My first in a while, I am back. I'm happy to be here. Hopefully, if this is your first time listening, hope you understand this is a show simply about conversation. More or less, it's just my voice log journal that I enjoy doing, but publicly. If someone's here to listen, happy to have you. I wouldn't recommend it. I'm not going to completely move away from the self-deprecation when it comes to this show. The music eventually does go away, if that's bothering you. I've got a couple of topics I'm going to talk about. There are some big changes coming to this show. You may have already noticed that I'm not sure what number this show is yet, but it's not number one, and yet it's probably the first one because I don't feel like uploading all of my old show. I'm changing platforms. The truth is, the show doesn't generate nearly enough to warrant paying a fee to distribute it. So I think it's best that I just have it on YouTube, and I understand that YouTube probably isn't the best platform to be. I mean, when people think of podcasts, YouTube definitely isn't what comes to mind. But when it comes to going on a budget, or not necessarily a budget, just economic justice rather, it's not worth spending 4 times the gross revenue I've ever made a month on something to have all 6 of you listen to it when they're somewhere for free. If you are a previous listener from the platform I was on before, all those shows are still available. There's really no re-listening value to them, but they are there. If you want them, you know where they're at. I'm not necessarily proud of those episodes, so if this is your first time listening to me, you can go search for them, but I'm not going to provide a link or anything because let's just say I don't really want them on. I don't want them easily accessible. Let's just say that. Okay, enough of the self-deprecation. Let's get on with the show. So like I said, there are going to be some changes coming along soon. I had a test run last weekend that I ran. I want to start having some guests on here, and I have some lineup. Now, granted, they're not going to be celebrities or anything. These are people I know. But like I said, this is a hobby-based podcast. I understand that very few people are going to actually listen to it, and that's okay. I'm always going to be coming back to that, even though I know that's not entertaining whatsoever. So, what I want to talk about first is I turned a few weeks ago, more or less, my birthday happened a few weeks, more like a week ago. And for the past 2 or 3 years, I've always wanted to do something new for my birthday every year because I've gotten past the age where you're like asking for gifts for your birthday. Now it's just who can you surround yourself with, and who appreciates. That sounds a little dark. Not really who appreciates you, but who your close friends and family are. That's kind of weird. My brother and I have birthdays very close to each other. His was yesterday, actually. The date that I'm recording this is I shouldn't give away that information. I'm going to have to upload this probably either a day after or a day before because I'm trying to stay as off the record as possible. But anyway, your birthday as you get older is more about who you can surround yourself with, and that becomes especially true. And as I get older, I start to feel more guilty the less effort I put into a family member's or like a grandparent's birthday. But it's gotten better. As a young kid, I don't know about you, but birthdays weren't nearly as big a deal for older members of your family. At least in my family. I can definitely see in different classes or different, that birthdays for senior citizens, or it really just depends on family to family because my parents married cross-class. I'm not going to say which is which, but families for their respective parents birthdays for their respective parents were very different depending on whose it was. That's an interesting thing to think about. I wonder if when birthdays what time of year birthdays started being recognized. It would probably have to have started with when we started recording time. Hey James, you remember that time you had this amazing connection of computers all across the world and had all this like unlimited information on it? Oh yeah, I do. Why don't I just check it out really quick? Alright, what do we got here? Alright, legal conventions. Well, in most legal systems, one becomes designated, I can't read, as an adult on a particular birthday, usually between 12 and 21. Oof. Yeah, I live in America, and here you're... No, I'm not gonna mock. I love my country. I do love my country. I love America, but I also... It's not above mockery, you know. I'll laugh at an American joke. But the point I was making is 12. Wow, I guess... I don't know what country has the earliest life expectancy. It's a milestone. At a certain ages, one may become eligible to leave full-time education, become subject to military conscription, or to enlist in the military, to marry without parental consent, to vote, to run for elected office, and to legally purchase or consume alcohol and tobacco products. Yeah, that makes sense. So I was looking more so like the history of it. There are cultural conventions. So let's see, ones off the top of my head without looking. They got that quinceañera. I took 4 years of Spanish, and this is boring. The point I was trying to make is different birthdays work in different times, and depending on where you're at, birthdays vary. But anyway, my thing is I enjoy trying something new, because that's what I like. So I started this about 2 years ago. The first time I rode in a helicopter for the first time. That was a very good experience. I would someday like to start taking pilot lessons, whether plane or helicopter, I don't know, but I would enjoy. That's something that I want to get back to. I haven't done it since, and I live really close to a community college that has like aviation maintenance, but I've looked into it and they don't give flights. The one I did was in downtown Toledo. It was a nice helicopter flight. I love viewing it. It's just a great experience. So that was for my birthday 2 years ago. The year after, it wasn't quite as exciting, but it was interesting. I went into a cave for the first time. What was neat about that is they had like a concession stand inside the cave, and I'm just like, wow, how do you generate the electricity to bring it in here and work all these devices? I mean, probably wires, I would imagine, but it was really interesting because you had to walk a long way to where the communal area was where everyone would sleep, and it was like the headquarters. And it was a fun time, and we rode in a boat in the cave and saw everything. That was a fun experience. It wasn't quite. I think I still crushed it or nailed it with the helicopter. That was a killer thing. But inside that cave, it was like, it still just threw me off how there was like a concession stand inside of it. But nonetheless, it was an enjoyable experience, and it definitely qualified because I had never been in a cave before, and it's not something I want to pursue the way I want to pursue helicopter flying. But it was a fun experience. But this year's birthday was different, and I want to talk about it, but the truth is it's kind of a controversial subject, and I don't want this show to be controversial. I don't want it to be political. I mean, it's not like when I have guests on, if the topic of politics comes up, I'm happy to talk about it and discuss it, but it's just not something I'm that interested in. It's not. I remember a few podcasts back, a while ago actually, I believe there was a France election going on, and I went through each candidate and their platforms, and I'm kind of embarrassed by some of my opinions that I gave by it. Anyway, I say I don't want this to be political, as I just say something that is inadvertently political. But what I did was I went shooting for the first time. I someone at work is very enthusiastic about guns, and I've been curious. I was in the Boy Scouts as a child, and I did earn the rifle merit badge. But I've shot a BB gun before, and the rifle that I shot did not seem very different from a BB gun. So I didn't really feel. I think it was a 22. I think that's like the weakest rifle you can. But there wasn't much recoil on the rifle. I don't even remember if I had hearing protection. I probably did. But it was an enjoyable experience. I was decent at it, but I never really thought that didn't feel like actually shooting. I don't dislike guns. I'm indifferent towards guns, at least up until my whole life up until now. But I never really counted, as I said, I didn't really count that as actual shooting because it just felt like I was shooting a BB gun. And maybe it was, I don't know, that was a while ago. That was back in, 2000. Now I'm curious. Anyway, so a coworker was very enthusiastic about guns, and I told him, hey, I approached him about it and said, hey, I always like trying something new, something that I've never done. Trying something new helps me feel young, and I'm getting older. I mean, if you knew my actual age, you'd probably be like, oh, you still got your whole life ahead of you. And yes, I do, and I don't really take the time to recognize that, and I probably should. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. So I approached my coworker about it, and I said, hey, I like trying something new. I know you know a lot about guns. I'd like to go shooting. I don't know what I want to shoot. I just want to go do it. And I don't know if you've ever talked to people who are enthusiastic about guns, but everyone that I've talked to, they're very, very open about it. Like, yeah, I'd love to, especially if you don't know anything about it. And the message that I got from him is, people like us who are very into guns, we tend to be that way because we feel a bit stigmatized, and we want to show people. A lot of people are afraid of guns. I'm one of them. Like I said, I'm indifferent towards guns. I'm very scared of them. I mean, hey, that's a dangerous device. It's designed to kill. And but he's like, we like showing people. This is him talking. We like showing people them because we want to show that when used properly and when used safely, there's not a whole lot to be afraid of. Yes, it's designed to kill, but it's also a fun sport. It can be sporting. It's a skill you can learn and do properly, just like anything else, just like any other hobby. So when I heard that, I thought, okay, this could be a fun time. So we planned about 2 weeks in advance, and the whole time I just thought, oh, this will be cool. This will be cool. This will be cool. And even the night before, I was like, yeah, this will be a good time. I wake up, and all of a sudden, it hits me. James, you're terrified of guns. They scare you a lot. So I was really, really nervous, and I considered texting to call it off. And this was on my birthday. I woke up to do it. I didn't chicken out, though. I got up, and I'm like, okay. There's like this regional type of gun store / shooting range that we met at. And it was it was about a 30-minute drive from where I live. Showed up, got in the parking lot. He drove up and he waved me over to go into a more concealed area because the night before he had texted me and said, I'm going to give you the lowdown on everything. And I said, thank you, because I'm pretty nervous. And he was like, hey, I'm not just going to hand you a gun at a range and tell you to start doing it. So that was a good sign. It told me that I picked the right. It at least evoked the message that I had chosen the right person to help show me what I'm doing, or to introduce me to this world. A world, again, that scares me, and I think that's sort of a fun part about doing something new. I mean, helicopter, I've never been particularly afraid of heights. I mean, I actually quite enjoy them, but I enjoy them because they're scary, so that scared me. Caving definitely scared me. You ever see that movie, The Last Descent, where, that was such a heartbreaking story. That guy got trapped upside down in a cave, and they couldn't get him out. That was scary. I mean, I did crawl into a few small places, but nothing that made me think I wouldn't be able to turn around. But so this is another thing that scares me. This reminds me of a funny quote I saw from The Onion. I really enjoy The Onion's publication. I think they do a lot of funny stuff there, but there's a quote, "Do one thing every day that scares you. Live your life in perpetual fear." Oh, that did make me chuckle a lot. So there was that. Anyway, where was I? So like I said, I was very scared. So I go up to his car and he unboxes his gun crate and or his gun box or something. I'm not sure what exactly it's called. But what was a little amusing to me in a comical way was as he told me to come over and park in a more concealed area, I guess just to be more, it's not a smart idea to just whip out a few pistols right in a parking lot like that. And he showed me like how to properly hold it, safety, always aim it towards the ground. He showed me the safety on it, and I do know what a safety is because from shooting a BB gun and a rifle, and his went from white to red, and he just put it in my head, "Red, you're dead." And I'm like, that's a good way to think of it. I won't forget that. So he shows me everything, and as he's doing this, a county sheriff pulls right into the driveway, and I'm like, oh, great. I mean, I don't know if there's anything illegal about what we're doing, but it certainly doesn't feel good to be around a couple of handguns. I did ask him a lot about the law and like what the legal stipulations are on like driving around with guns in your cars, and I was a little set off on how he wasn't quite able to answer all of my questions. But he's like, I'm like, so is it legal to just drive around with these? Is it registered? He's like, oh yeah, they're registered, and like, so you can, if it's registered, you can just drive around. He's like, he responded, I don't know. I just started, oh, okay, oh, it's not in my car. So anyway, we walked in. I didn't let him know that it was my birthday because I didn't want him to, particular because we're not very close, and I didn't want him to feel weird that I decided to spend my birthday with him. But so we did that, or he showed it to me. We walked in. It was my first time, so I had to talk and sign off on a waiver on what the rules are, read them through. Basically liability, which is understandable. You have dangerous devices in there. And this is when the fear started really kicking in. He had not headphones, but they're like headphones. It's ear protection that covers your ear. And I was glad that the few days before I asked him what I needed, and he said he had a bunch of stuff I could borrow, which is good. I was nervous that he was going to have like those little like foam things you put in your ear, because those have never stayed in my ear before. In like 5th grade in the Scouts again, I was in a Civil War reenactment, and I wanted to get those because I was nervous. I've always hated loud noises. They are not necessarily, well, yes, that too, but also sudden loud noises, which is one of the reasons I've been so afraid of guns. I don't think it's necessarily that I'm afraid of them because of what they do. I mean, I'm sure that is part of that, but a lot of it is because the loud, instantaneous wha-bang. It's not a fun part of it. But I was nervous that he would add those, but he had the over-the-ear protection, which is good, and I didn't need eye protection. Apparently glasses covers that. So we go in, and like I said, this is where the fear really starts, because obviously I live in a country where mass shootings are a common thing. They do happen. And like I said, I don't want this to be political, so I'm not going to give my 2 cents on it. But we were given a lane in between 2 people, and it wasn't very crowded. I think there were 4 active lanes, including us. There's one way, I think it was the very first one, and all the way on the other side, there were 2 people shooting, and we were with 1 space in between, and that was the one we were assigned. And it was a scary experience. Like I didn't quite break down. Like Like the time, I think I saw a news story one time where some reporter really freaked out over shooting it. But I understand why people get so scared about these big rifles. They look intense. I understand. I'm not trying to say I'm for or against gun control or whatever, but the person on the very, very end was shooting a pistol, which is what we brought. We had two little pistols, and one of them was a concealed carry. The other one was like an open carry. But he was shooting that. That was loud and a little like you could tell. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. It was definitely an intense bang, and you could feel the sound waves hit you. But on the very end, we were between two big, I don't know if they were AR-15s or whatever the thing was, but I could feel it in my chest every time. And I couldn't help but think of how crazy and intense it was. And so that kind of freaked me out. And so I tell him, hey, we're between two rifles right now, and that kind of sucks. Let me go talk and see if we can get us another lane. And so we did, and so it was a little better, but it was still a little intimidating the whole time. And so we he got it set up, and I was still a little. It's I don't know if it was fight or flight. It was like not fight but flight mode. Like I was a little like, whoa, the culture shock. I've never been around this type of weaponry before, and so trying to focus on the new equipment, barely being able to hear with the ear protection and all that jazz. But I told him, hey, why don't you go ahead and shoot it first, and I'll watch you and see how it goes. So he did that, and I watched him. He was pretty good. We got a few targets. We had two targets. One was just general. I think it was like 3 rows of 2, or 2 rows of 3. I don't know, whatever the side-to-side one was. There were 3 of 2 side-to-side. And we also had a human one, and he said that's a good one to get because these kind of guns are designed for self-defense. Interestingly, he also told me that when you're practicing with a handgun, you don't want to use they got that. It's like a field goal post on the back of it. It's just to help you aim. And he said you don't want to use those. I think. Do you remember that movie, The Patriot, with Mel Gibson? And they say that phrase, aim small, miss small. Of course, that's like totally different because they're using muskets. You can only shoot once. That was a good movie, by the way. I really liked that movie. But so he said you don't really want to aim a whole lot or use those. You want to aim, but you don't want to use those a whole lot because you're just shooting, you're emptying your clip if it's self-defense, and you're better off just getting them all out, and odds are you're going to disarm the person who's going to attack you. I'm skeptical of, but not important. So I didn't aim at that one. I just tried at the targets, and I did okay. I did about as well as I can remember that I did back in high school. But once I finally fired the first shot, I had a relaxing, okay, this isn't a big deal. That's about how that went. It was a good time. It was a good time. So changing subjects, laterally. I just want to add, and then after that day, I went with my friends and family down to a steakhouse. Had a great T-bone. I ordered it medium. Because this steakhouse has a reputation for undercooking because you can always throw it back on. You can't throw it back off. So I was banking on them because I like medium rare going on medium, in between that area. Medium rare is a little too red for me. Medium is a little too not red for me. They ended up giving me kind of medium well, but that's okay. It was still a delicious steak, and sometimes people treat... And I really, really love steak. I'm not an expert on it because, hey, steak's expensive. You can't always just throw stuff down. Or you can't always just order a steak. That's the thing about these steak connoisseurs. You must either have started an amazing hobby, or you have to have some decent capital to become an expert on steak testing. That's the point I'm trying to make. But I tried it. It was still a good steak. But the point I'm trying to make is, so many people treat the redness of a steak as though it's steak sauce. And so many people treat steak sauce like it's redness. I mean, not as many as the former, but I mean, it's good. I like a medium rare going on medium steak, and regardless, it was still a delicious steak. And I think if your steak depends on being bloody in order to be good, then I don't think it's really a good steak in the first place. That's just my two thoughts. So that was my birthday, and I came away from the experience. I enjoyed. By the end, I was like, okay, this isn't too bad. I don't know if I'm gonna pursue it the way I want to pursue flying, but it was a good time. So now this is where I'm saying I'm changing gears. I had finally seen the new It movie, and I'm about a year, not quite a year, but a good 8 or 9 months late on it. And I really, really enjoyed the book. I enjoy Stephen King a lot. I actually haven't seen the original, and the truth is, I think that after reading the book, I think that it's a difficult story to transfer to film. I think any Stephen King story is difficult to transfer to film. I mean, look at all of the successful. What are the most successful Stephen King books that have been adapted to film? I think undoubtedly the most successful one was The Shining, and Stephen King hated The Shining, and understandably so. I read The Shining. I enjoyed the book. I think Stanley Kubrick did a better. I think he created a better movie than Stephen King did a book. I think it's definitely a different story, and I think it's one of those examples where that's one thing that annoys me so much is when people say the book is always better than the movie. That just annoys me so much. Because it's not true. I mean, generally speaking, I would say that movie adaptations seldom are better than the book itself. That said, that doesn't warrant saying that the book is always better than the movie. And the three examples I would always point to is The Wizard of Oz, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which the movie adaptation, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, I think was far, far better from the book. That's a rant for another day. And finally, The Shining, I think I think the movie adaptation created a better piece of art than the book. If you want to argue me on that, please do. You can tweet me at James Freel Show, at James Freel Show. Well, I thought I had more to talk about. I guess I'm just going to skim through it. Like I said, there are changes coming. If you realize the sound quality is taking a dip, that is not going to last long. We're going to have a lot of different things going on. You should definitely stay tuned for that. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I'll be shocked if someone has. Again, tweet me at James Freel Show if you want to, because I'll happily defend. There are very few things in life that I'm willing to get argumentative about that I think I can stand by. But those three movies being better than the book is one of them. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was how we're kind of in that dark period of sports. If you're like me, and I shouldn't say that because the World Cup's going on, and I wish I cared more about what we in America call soccer. It seems like it's kind of like learning Spanish or Chinese. It's very valuable to like it, especially if you're a sports fan. And I do love sports in this order. I'm always in a constant battle between baseball and football being number one. But below that, it goes basketball and hockey. And because I like hockey, I feel like there should be some more wiggle room between that. Anyway, we will talk about that on the next episode of the James Freel Show. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please, if you haven't, please subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.